Hey everybody, Quantum here, bringing you some spice, or at least I hope so, in an Amber Steel Perdita based deck. This is not like Amber Steel Song, even though we do play songs, and this is not a Mufasa based deck either. This is a deck that kind of focuses around mid-range options and using some of the new steel cards we got from Ursula's Return, as you can see on screen here, mainly the new Mickey Mouse and the new Magic Broom, as toolbox options to use with Perdita. The deck list and the deck profile video will be made exclusive to members first for the first 24 to 48 hours. So again, just a way to say thank you to members who support the channel, and you can join for $2.99 a month if you choose, but you don't have to. That stuff will be made public afterwards. So if you're interested in that, just come back to the video after a day and you'll probably see the deck list available. But the focus of this deck is mainly to counter a lot of the Emerald decks that you're starting to see pop up in the format. Now, we know from Atlanta to Chicago, basically the two Lorcana challenge events, that Perdita obviously got a lot worse with the introduction of Ursula's Return because of things like Brawl, the new Sisus, both the 3-drop banishing 1 strength or less, and the new 8-drop Sisu that banishes 2 strength or less characters when played. However, Perdita, gives you some immediate value because on play she does bring back a character, and if she does survive for a turn or two and the opponent doesn't have that instant removal for her, she can put in a lot of work and just generate you a ton of advantage. And then when you don't face the Ruby matchups, of course, she's just very, very powerful. Having that 6 willpower or that 6 defense represents something that's very hard to out on or against other ink pairings, and like I said, it really does help you play around discard. So in this build, as you can see, we're using things like a whole new world because getting more characters into our discard is helpful. Refreshing our hand after we've dumped a lot of those smaller characters on board, since we do play a number of 1 and 2 drops to use with Perdita, is useful because again it just gives Perdita more gas in order to put things on board. But what's really nice about this is being able to play a lot of the steel songs in this pairing allow you to deal with, again, a lot of the aggro threats that you might face up against in the meta, but also being able to revive this Mickey Mouse will give Challenger +2 to something when it's played. So you can imagine you have a bit of an established board state. Let's say you have a Tinkerbell on board already or a Robin Hood shifted on board, that's a 3/6 body. If you're able to drop Perdita and bring back the Mickey Mouse from the discard pile, that makes your Robin Hood a 5/6. It makes your Tinkerbell a 6/5. So it gives you a lot of instant value. And like I said, you play a lot of the steel songs in order to help deal with certain board states. Sapphire decks playing Cogsworth, mainly Sapphire Steel, can give you a little bit of trouble, but you can definitely outrace them because those decks usually will depend on Tematoa Dime in order to close out the game, and you can definitely race them in order to win the game before that even comes out. Because on the top end, or I really shouldn't say top end, but mid to top end, so things like Robin Hood, Tinkerbell, Surfer Stitch, obviously Perdita itself, those are all like high toughness characters, and so other steel decks that you face up against, like Emerald Steel, Sapphire Steel, will have some trouble outing those cards because of their high defense stat. So here you see me have to hard cast the whole new world, which isn't the end of the world, and it does give the opponent a lot of advantage. And like I said, against Ruby, this is some of our worst matchups that we're going to face up against, but this is how this is going to go if you face Ruby. Like, it's just a drawn out slog. And I did play this for 6 matches, and I think I won all 6, and I'll probably include I paired up against a Sapphire Steel player and an Emerald Steel player, and they both just conceded before the game really even got going, and I don't know why. But the games I was able to play out, ironically enough, were against my tougher matchups, in my opinion, in the Ruby decks. So yeah, this video is probably pretty long, but if you're wondering why, it's because I'm going to show you, I did attempt to get some more matches in, but I guess players just didn't want to play. But this interaction here is very useful, though, to see kind of how the deck functions in something that would be a more troubling matchup for it, right, with those Ruby decks. Being on the play here does help me, right? Being able to reset tempo with something like a whole new world does help. But these Mufasas being sticky on the board, right, make them a little tricky to deal with and to remove. We are ahead in the lore count, but here, after we've refreshed our hand, we have a lot of options available to us. We're going to be able to shift Robin Hood, and the Gastons are definitely a problem. So I think in this scenario, taking out, because I gave the opponent a fresh hand, right, I have to take out the Gaston here and then Zeus the other Gaston with the last 4 ink is kind of what I was thinking here. I can't risk them, getting 4 free, it's not really ink, but being able to play let's say a Maleficent Dragon next turn without actually having the 9 ink. So you see me overextend a little bit in order to out the board there. We do gain the lore off the Robin Hood, which is always great. We have a Tinkerbell and the small Tinkerbell ready to shift, but we just can't get the setup going because again, you have that strength-based removal to deal with. And we haven't seen a Perdita yet, but I think this match is quite a drawn-out slog. So yeah, you're going to get some good interactions here. Very spicy by the opponent to drop You Have Forgotten Me, but this does cost them 4 ink, and I do have another Whole New World in hand, so I'm not feeling too bad. However, if they do opt to take out my Robin Hood, that is going to slow me down quite a bit, and they do. So they know it's going to give me a card draw, but they're like, let me just deal with that card on board, and that does suck a little bit. The Tinkerbell in my hand is decent value because it won't be able to get Medusa, which is nice, or like Sisu down, but oh, sorry, and the opponent is still 1 away from the Maleficent dragon, right? So they can't out the Tinkerbell. So I'm hoping this Tinkerbell survives to sing Whole New World next turn. Again, I overextend my hand because between the Tinkerbell and the Strength, I'm able to take out the dock to prevent them from getting that extra piece of, again, it's not really ink, but being able to play like a Maleficent dragon with only 8 ink, right? I really need to avoid that. So I don't want to exert the Tinkerbell, the Cinderella, sorry, because that's just, you know, a free out for the Mufasa. They drop a Goofy here, which is quite interesting. Quest with the Mufasa, and I'm hoping they just pass, but of course they end up, okay, you know, they ink and they don't play nothing else. That's really good for us. The Perdita here is really good. Okay, I'm thinking, why? So don't sing with the Tinkerbell. Instead, take out the Mufasa, I guess, to see what they get off the top. And it really sucks that the Mufasa resolves after, because being able to deal 2 with Tinkerbell after I see that they get the Pongo would have been amazing, right? Just out the Pongo there. But yeah, Perdita comes down, brings back the Simba in bodyguard mode, and if the opponent wants to crash their Goofy into the Simba, they get 2 lore, but it outs their Goofy, that's fine. And I'm hoping, I think the reason I did this was because I was hoping they would spend the 2 ink on the Pongo to get a card to their hand, then I can just Whole New World it away. But unfortunately they don't do that. They have a Maui, which is really bad for me, because the Maui outs the Simba, and then the Goofy can take out the Tinkerbell, and that just provides the opponent with a lot of good value there, you know, keeping their Maui on board basically, and then they're able to play out even more of their hand. So now it looks like a really bad situation for me. You never really want to sing a Whole New World with Perdita, so I hard cast it there because I'd rather just quest with the Perdita, but I do have to worry about this Maui on board. Thankfully, our Whole New World does get us a lot of, I guess you can say, just gas in our hand, and we have the songs necessary in order to take out the Maui. So no point in bringing back the, well, I guess you could bring back the Mickey Mouse, but I'm not going to use it with the Cinderella to give challengers, so I just bring back the Simba as extra protection. From what I've seen from the opponent right now, they're on a Mufasa build. It's very unlikely that they're on Be Prepared, so I'm fine overextending my board here. Yes, I could be playing into a Sisu white, but this deck doesn't usually play that 8-drop Sisu. I mean, this one might, because he's playing the smaller ones too, but I think most Ruby decks play that. We're going to go ahead and just mop up the board a little bit here and leave the Maui up, because if they want to take out the Simba with the Maui, I think that's fine. It'll put them on 4 damage. The issue that I obviously forgot about here is like Rapunzel, but like if they draw 3 with Rapunzel, it should be fine, because again, they need to deal with my board state. So yeah, they drop the Maleficent Dragon, and the smart play to take out the Simba so that the Maui can take out the Perdita, so that the Maui takes 1 less damage technically, right, than Maui running into the Simba, which would result in it taking 2 extra, or 1 extra damage and taking 2 damage total. Then they drop a Chernobog, and I was like really not expecting that, and I was like, holy crap, that's really bad for me. So I'm going to basically be in a race now with the opponent. So we drop the Surfer Stitch, draw 2, and then we're going to be able to just basically drop our whole hand here. So because the Maui only has 3 points of damage, I think I should have taken it out with the Robin Hood instead of quest with the Robin Hood there. But I guess it's okay. They're going to be able to quest for 5 if they want. Can they deal with my board? They have to deal with my board, so they can't quest, right? So the Maui probably takes out a Cinderella. The Chernobog takes out the Robin Hood. The Maleficent takes out a Cinderella. The Maui takes out a Cinderella. They need to deal with my board still, which they probably have answers. The Surfer Stitch is a huge problem for them, though, because they can't Medusa it. But they can Medusa the Piglet, because on board and the readied state right now, I have 2, 4, 7 lore on board readied. So they, and then the Cinderella is another, so I have 8. Okay, so they have the Goofy, which is really unfortunate for me. They take out the Cinderella, and then they have a Tremaine, which is again really bad. Of course, I'm going to have to take out the Smee here, because I can just play Tinkerbell next turn and quest. The opponent is down to 3 cards in hand, and this game state really got away from me really fast on that opponent's last turn, because if they have another Goofy, they can actually win the game. But this top deck, Zeus is pretty good value, and I think for too long here, because they're on 11. They have 3 in Chernobog, 4 in the Maleficent and the Tremaine, so that's 7, right? And then the Goofy challenges, that's 9. So they have exactly 9 lore on board to win the game. I can't take out the Chernobog unless I challenge into it, which I don't want to do. And I can only quest for 5 going to 19 myself. So I'm in a weird position because it's not like I don't quest here, because I do run the risk of them just dropping even more removal on my cards. So I end up questing, going to 19, and the opponent can still win the game if they drop a second Goofy, because they have 2 off Goofy and then 5 between the Chernobog and the Tremaine. So 5 off Chernobog and Tremaine if they quest go to 16. Goofy puts them to 18, and then a second Goofy here, which they can definitely draw into off of this 3 off the Rapunzel. The second Goofy puts them to 20. Thankfully, they don't draw it, and I think they actually went through 2 Goofies already, and this is their 3rd one on board here. So I guess the odds were pretty low that they would get it. But yeah, they're just barely able to not get over the hump there, which is good for us, because unless they have another Tremaine here, we also would win the game, but these decks usually aren't going to be on like more than 2 Tremaine, so again, it's pretty unlikely. So there you can kind of see us getting a little lucky and being able to close out the game here, but the Tinkerbell ends up winning it for us. And yeah, that was a tough, long, drawn-out match against Ruby Amber. In this next matchup here, we were going up against a Steel Ruby, so not something you would normally see in the meta, but I think this ink pairing got significantly better with Ursula's Return, and it probably is a little underexplored. But even in set 3, like, people were trying to make the pirate deck work, and I just think it didn't have enough tools. But a location focused deck, because you know you have a lot of very powerful locations in each of these colors, can still work, and it got, like I said, a little bit better in Ursula's Return. So on the draw now, we're going to be able to play a Robin Hood on turn 1. The opponent inked a location and passed, so no turn 1 play for them. There's a lot of removal in this ink pairing, obviously, so you have to be careful of that. They're on, yeah, as expected, probably like Razul's, Mr. Smee's, a lot of the 2-cost 3/3 bodies that you can really exploit in this ink pairing, and then the Donald Duck in order to gain you even more advantage if you are able to banish something with it, because it all synergizes being like pirates and captains and things like that. So the opponent is going to end up inking a Moana there, so again, just more location-based synergy that they're trying to go for, and they drop a John Silver, and this card is actually really good in my opinion. Like, this card can be a big problem, so I know they're going to drop locations starting next turn, right? And I guess I do opt to drop the Robin Hood here, which is interesting, and I opt not to quest, because if they do drop a location, the John Silver will be able to survive. They could swing into my Robin Hood with the John Silver. It would only take 2 damage with a location up, and then the Razul can finish off the Robin Hood. So that's why I don't end up questing there. I faced this John Silver before, like at somebody at my locals a long time ago, and I know how strong it can be. So as expected, they definitely follow up with the location. Now I'm calling it Prince John. Now the John Silver has resist +1 and is able to quest for an additional lore. So they quest with it, knowing full well that I can't take it out with my Robin Hood. However, I do have the Rapunzel heal here, so I'm going to end up inking my Tinkerbell, which is unfortunate, but I'm kind of running low on inkables. You could argue that I could be inking the Baboon there, but for some reason I opt to keep it. We just drop the Rapunzel and pass. Was I keeping the Baboon because I wanted to play it on the John Silver before it got resist +2? Well, obviously that didn't happen, because if they drop a second location here, it will have resist 2, making it even harder to out on my side here, because the Let the Storm Rage On or the Baboon will not take it out. They could crash both their characters into my Robin Hood now, though, but they would lose their Prince John if that was the case. So again, I'm not feeling too bad. They are on 5 ink, though, so a Maui could also come down. That would also be kind of bad for me. Thankfully, you can see here that they end up not having too many big threats. Yes, they have developed board state here, but nothing that is unmanageable for us, especially considering we have like, what, 7 or 8 cards in our hand right now. We are, potentially at a threat of getting Whole New Worlded, but again, the opponent being on 5 ink, not having that 5 quester on, or sorry, 5 cost character on board means that they can't sing the Whole New World, so it would put them behind in order to try to come back from this kind of advantage game that we have generated here. So we're going to go ahead and ink, also being on 5 ink now, and we have a number of different options that we can start putting down on board. Very odd to go for the Tinkerbell and Baboom on the Smee there, but I guess I'm just saying, you know, I don't want you questing with the Smee unless you put a captain on board. And then following up, like, I think, yeah, no, that was definitely a mistake, right? Because I could Baboom the location, then I can finish it off next turn with the Rapunzel and the Tinkerbell, and just leave the Smee up. Like, that doesn't really matter. So yeah, that was definitely a misplay, some questionable plays here. Regardless, though, you can see some of the synergy with Perdita here. We're able to play Perdita and get back a free Robin Hood. That makes our Strength of a Raging Fire even better, because now we're able to sing it and take out the opposing Donald Duck there on 4 toughness, which is nice. They ink, and again, they're not on anything too threatening, like what on 6 can really come down that's going to threaten this board state. We still have a lot of removal options in hand with the Grab Your Swords, and they let the Storm Rage on. We have a draw engine in the Stitch online and the Whole New World, but the opponent doesn't even bother trying to see what's going to happen, and they just end up scooping it up. So yeah, I mean, I think that deck really does rely on a Whole New World, because otherwise you just get no other form of advantage, right? Like, how else are you going to draw cards in red steel? So ruby steel, right? In this matchup, we get paired against a green steel player, and this is what I was waiting for. And we're on the play, so again, very, very strong, but I do want to try to get some games in on the draw with this deck. Unfortunately, with Pixelborn closing, I don't think that's going to be the case. We're not going to have too much more time to test, but it is what it is. Anyways, we don't have a turn 1 play, unfortunately. The opponent does in a Pegasus. We're going to go ahead and ink our songs to try to play around that Ursula, and that's an advantage of going up against this deck, is that, you know, well, I guess you ink your songs, but on the play, you don't have to worry about, you know, usually you don't have to worry about getting Deceivered. We have the Baboom ready, though, in case they do drop a Diablo, and they curve out nicely, right, with the Bucky on turn 2. And with this Piglet, you know, it's not really threatening anything right now, unfortunately. We drew our Robin Hood a little too late, but I think setting this up for the shift next turn is kind of what we need to do. If we do end up getting forced to discard, we probably discard the Perdita and try to keep the Rapunzel on the Robin Hood shift in order to draw extra cards. And then, like I said, if they do have the Diablo, we should be able to Baboom it before they're able to draw cards off of it anyways, because you definitely don't want them to be drawing cards off your Rapunzel to draw as well. You definitely want to be able to out that Diablo. And again, this deck does that very, very well. So I'm not sure really, you know, what was going on. Maybe the opponent like just couldn't play anymore. They had to leave. But this is what I mean. Like, I was just running into these games, and when I finally got the matchups I wanted to showcase, it was like, okay, the opponent just ends up resigning. Like I said, maybe an emergency came up, or their hand was like just really, really bad, and they were like, well, forget it. Like, I can't really play. They had no Diablo, no 3-cost Bloodborne to play, or no 3-drop really, and they were just like, yeah, this hand, I'm just going to get out advantage by Amber Steel Song, which is probably what they think I'm on. And then the timer comes up, and they just end up scooping at the end of the timer, I guess. I mean, if you're going to scoop, just scoop early. Like, are you thinking? Yeah, so we draw, and I think when I attempt to play, they're just like, yeah, they scoop. So I don't know. Doesn't seem like it was a salty disconnect or anything like that, or you know, resign, but why wait till your timer comes up, right? Anyways, in this next matchup, Sapphire Steel, so and going second, so I'm like, perfect, this is exactly what I want. We're going to mulligan away most things in order to hopefully play better on curve. We opt to keep the Storm just for the Cinderella synergy, even though we know Storm will likely not take out anything too significant here. You know, we can damage a Smee, which I guess you could say would prevent them from questing or force them to use a Popsicle in order to heal up the Smee if they quest with it. But yeah, the opponent just ends up scooping right away, so didn't get the footage for Sapphire Steel, unfortunately, either. Okay, so apparently only the Ruby Ember players want to play. Once again, on the play, though, so, I mean, I guess in this matchup, it would be really hard for us on the draw. We would essentially depend on swinging tempo with doing some kind of board clear or board management with like the Mickey Challenger, Tinkerbell, Grab Your Swords, and then tempo reset with a Whole New World. The issue is, like I said at the beginning, is like the Ruby decks have better top end than I do. You saw at the end of the first Ruby Ember match, like once they started going a little bit wide with like Chernobog and the Maleficent Dragon and stuff, I was like, oh, I can't really deal with those, so it's getting a little tense up here. But you want to try to close the game up before turn 9 for sure, or before you get to 9 ink. So the opponent starts off with a Mulan, we start off with a Robin Hood, but again, being on the play gives us a decent advantage here. We're going to end up inking the Mickey and probably dropping the Simba. Yeah, because we're like, if do you want to go ahead and crash your Mulan into the Simba, be my guest. And the funny thing is, like, you don't really peg players to be on the shift Mulan, and if that does come down and you're not expecting it, like it can, that's a tempo swing card. I talked about it in my card review for Ursula's Return. Like that card blows up your board if it is able to get off. Challenge something, deal 5 damage, and then deal 5 damage to 2 other targets on board. Like that's crazy, right? So the Mulan is always a threat because you never know if the player is actually on the shift Mulan. But we're anticipating on turn 3 they're probably going to drop a Julieta. I drop a Tinkerbell here. Long shot to hopefully draw a Tinkerbell, a big Tink to shift onto, but it's still possible. They drop a Julieta here, and they make an interesting decision to only heal 1 point of damage on their Mulan, and this is a big tell that they either have another Julieta they want to drop next turn, or more likely a Rapunzel, and they don't have the Beast or the Gothel in order to get the full draw 3. So we're going to go ahead and shift Robin Hood here, and because the opponent is slow, and they're still a turn away from Maui, we're going to quest out and then use the, the draw and discard ability, I guess, off of the Tinkerbell to hopefully try to fish for a whole new world, because that's really what we want to see. A whole new world here would be absolutely insane because we know the opponent is going to drop another draw card here. And yes, their board is a little bit wide, but it's nothing that we can't deal with since, it's all still relatively weak. They draw again off Rapunzel. They have 5 cards in hand. We have 2. We're going to draw a third. So we're going to be able to ink and... I should use the, scry ability. I don't know why I call it scry. But okay, we use the draw and discard. And unfortunately, I'm like, oh, am I going to have to discard this Rapunzel because I want to keep this Tinkerbell? And then it hit me afterwards, like, oh, the opponent's going to be on 5 ink next turn. If they do have the Mulan shift, my whole board is gone, and I lose the game. But again, most people who are on Ruby Amber are not playing the shift Mulan, and thankfully the opponent isn't, or likely isn't here, so they're just going to double crash into the Simba, and again, this is just giving them more fodder to draw off of Rapunzel's and or Julietta's, but again, that's fine, because I want to top deck a whole new world in order to reset the hand state. And yeah, they drop the second Rapunzel to draw 3 on the heel of the Julieta, and I'm really reaching here, really reaching to try to draw this whole new world, which can be sung with the Robin Hood. I draw into, what is that, my 3rd Rapunzel. That's really bad. Don't know why I did that. Should have definitely used the Tinkerbell effect. Okay, I did that because I've given up on the whole new world, or my better chance at drawing a whole new world is using Rapunzel heal on the Robin Hood there, which is good, I guess. But this board state is a little problematic now because the opponent is going to be on 6 ink. They can drop a Maui, they can drop a Madame Medusa, which instantly outs my Robin Hood. Like we're starting to become into a bit of a troubling situation here. Not having the big Tinkerbell, because I discarded the one I drew, I believe, it is a little bit of a problem. So they're going to go ahead and crash into the Simba here. Are they going to sacrifice their Daisy Duck or use a Rapunzel? Okay, so they use a Rapunzel, both their Rapunzels. And that's actually really good for me here because it prevents them from questing. But they do indeed have the Maui, and that's not great. So this board state is definitely troubling for us now. They've gone through, what, 2 Rapunzels or 3 at this point? I don't even know. They quest with the Daisy Duck. So yeah, you can see their board is super wide here. We're going to start off by strengthening the... let the Storm Rage on the Maui, which is a really good draw, which draws us into the Tinkerbell. And I could raw play out this Tinkerbell, which you could argue is the correct play rather than playing it here on shift, because all that really allows me to do is drop the Robin Hood, but we do mop up the board quite decently here. Oh, no, I see. Okay, ink the Robin Hood and play out the Tinkerbell. Okay, I guess. That's not really worth it though, right? Why not just raw play out the Tinkerbell? Then it's not exerted. I keep the exerted Tinkerbell on board. I don't need to replay this Tinkerbell. So very bad play by me right there, I think. If you made it this far in the video, yeah, that was, this is why it helps to go back and look at some of your games, because why would I just waste more resources there? I guess I get an extra point of ink, but like, does that really need it? Something unexpected comes down in the Be Prepared. You don't really see that too often in Ruby Amber, but I haven't really seen a Mufasa from this player either, so it's fine. We have a perfect follow-up to Be Prepared in the Perdita. But now that I've seen one, I'm like, well, the opponent probably has another Be Prepared waiting. And there is a Mufasa. Oh my goodness, and a Gaston. So a little bit of a problem for us, but they didn't out the Perdita. So now Perdita is going to quest for 2 along with that Simba for a total of 3. And we are able to get back a Robin Hood here, which next turn, if it survives, we can shift with the Robin Hood that we have in hand. And then gain some lore off of banishing something. And we do have the Rapunzel as well to heal and draw. Unfortunately, the opponent drops a Scar, and I'm like, holy crap, that is really bad for me here. So again, another Ruby card that just absolutely decimates Perdita, because it's just like free for Scar to take that out, as well as anything else that she brings back. In that case, it was the Simba. But the opponent is now on 1 card, and when you actually look at this match, for not getting a whole new world and being able to wheel away my opponent's advantage that they were able to generate off of those Rapunzel heals and still be in this game, in my opinion, is kind of like a bit of a feat. Like, I didn't see the whole new world, the opponent draw like a ton of cards off Rapunzel, and I was able to still play through all of that card draw. Off Mufasa, they get another Mufasa, which is unfortunate. But now we have the option to drop the Rapunzel and heal to draw our cards here. And yeah, a little unfortunate that we can't get rid of this this Scar, because the Scar is going to crash into the Robin Hood. We will at least draw and take out the Scar along with us, assuming the opponent doesn't have a Medusa here on their top deck. They have a Maleficent Dragon, which is like crazy strong because it's going to take out our Rapunzel here, slowing us down significantly. Okay, very interesting. They opt to take out the Robin Hood there because they want to quest with the Scar instead of taking it out. Knowing that I'm going to go to 19 though, wow, they're playing it risky there. I think the safer option was definitely... Okay, I guess this makes sense because they're like, well, I'm going to win the game next turn, and like, you can't deal with my board because you're Amber Steel Song and I have big threats on board. Okay, that's understandable. We're going to let the Storm Rage on, hard cast, taking out the Scar. Now the opponent is on one lore from Gaston, 4 lore from the Maleficent and the Mufasa, so they'll go up to 17, and Mulan puts them to 18. So there's like nothing they can do to win the game unless I quest here and they top deck like a Scar or a Mulan or something, and they're able to shift and blow up my board. So I just don't quest, knowing that even if they top deck removal here, like it's not going to be significant enough for them to out my whole board. So I'm fine. And then, yeah, in this case, dropping the Tremaine, not being able to out my board, and then I'm able to quest for game next turn. So they give me the well played, I give them the well played, they know what's up. We just drop our draw and quest for game. And that is the Amber Steel Perdita deck. Long video. Let me know if you made it this far. Thank you again for watching. Quantum is out.